blessed life. And came to Austin, Texas at 13. Soon after moving here, I got very heavily into drugs, into alcohol. I used to cut myself, burn myself, still have these scars on my arm, very self-destructive. I lost 2 friends to addiction and was going down that path.
I'm obsessed with my plants at Sylvia.
We recorded a week and a half ago with a guy. He's a co-owner of a small veteran-owned apparel company. He was in the Marine Corps. He took a shrapnel to the shoulder, I think in 2004 from an RPG. And he then went and graduated Marine Sniper School. Pretty cool story.
Yeah.
But I never hit the record button on my sound mixer at the beginning of talking to this guy. Initially I would say, oh no, but by the time we were done with the podcast, we were very comfortable. So I think the round 2 will be even better. And, so.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I mean, things happen and it was a good conversation anyway, just to get to know each other and his story and stuff. So it was worth it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I guess I'll kick this off, do a brief introduction. I'm not going to go super in depth, because I'll get the publicity out there of who exactly you guys are as much as I can. Do you want to do the introduction, or do you want me to start? You can. Okay. Welcome to the Matt and Monica podcast, where we have Akshay Nanavati and his wife, Melissa, and 2 incredible people. I actually stumbled upon them a couple weeks ago. I've never actually heard who they were or what they were doing until then. And I believe it's going to be absolutely huge.
It's amazing.
Yes. Akshay, he was in the Marine Corps, and correct me if I throw anything out that's a little off. I'm paraphrasing a little bit here. And he suffered some severe PTSD and some addiction issues, primarily from his deployment in Iraq. And what year was that in Iraq?
I was in Iraq in 07, 08.
07, 08. Okay. Yes. And, he openly talks about it, overcoming that adversity. And he's since done incredible things with his life. And it's very inspiring, especially for me, being prior military.
Yeah.
And because if he can overcome those things, it makes me feel like, man, anybody can.
Yeah.
And then he has since released a book called Fearvana, which I have actually started, which speaks volumes because I'm not a reader, and I'm still really not. I'm listening to the audible.
It still counts.
It's incredible. And it really does change your perspective. And if I haven't learned anything in the last 37 years of my life, his perspective is quite literally everything. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And he is going to be crossing successfully, by the way. He's going to be crossing Antarctica.
Yep.
Starting in a 110-day journey across Antarctica, unassisted, on skis with a 400-pound approximate weight skid pulling it from coast to coast. And pretty awesome. Some would say crazy. I don't see it as crazy because my perspective has since changed. Maybe about a year and a half ago, if I heard this story, I'd be like, man, he's crazy.
That's crazy.
No, he's still crazy.
It's okay. Yeah, I get that all the time.
Still crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy is good. So
It's not a negative word.
Exactly.
Absolutely. In his amazing wife, Melissa, I recently watched them both talk on a podcast, and it was pretty cool because they seem very, not that I'm by any means comparing myself to this guy, but, very similar dynamic in the relationship where they're just, they look very supportive of each other and just genuine about it. And
you can see and feel the love. And I love seeing couples talk about their lives together, because it's not often on anything really the husband and wife are on anything together.
Yeah.
So that was very fun, and I loved that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. We loved it
Thank
too.
you.
Yeah.
I didn't really necessarily know where I wanted to start this. I don't generally try to have too much of a game plan formulated, because I think
just go with the flow.
Authentic conversation. There's nothing better. And as long as I can take a step back and pretend you guys are just 2 normal people out there, just talking to you, whatever normal is. But
yeah.
Do you want to start at any certain point that you think that would be worthwhile, or do you want to start one maybe in your deployment in Iraq and go from there?
Sure. A little bit about my background that led me to not only the Marines, but Iraq, and now, after Iraq and then Antarctica, and now our journey together. My background, I'm originally from India, was born in India, moved around a lot at a young age, India, Singapore, Austin. Not an extremely wealthy family, but middle class. So certainly not poor. No, I didn't really know suffering or adversity as a young child. My greatest hardship was moving around, which was no complaints. I was lived a blessed life, and came to Austin, Texas at 13. Soon after moving here, I got very heavily into drugs, into alcohol. I used to cut myself, burn myself, still have these scars on my arm, very self-destructive. I lost 2 friends to addiction and was going down that path. I was in many ways the same guy I am now, the one kind of pushing the edge, but drugs was my vehicle of expression. So I was the guy kind of going as hard as possible. But thankfully, before it took my life too, I watched the movie Black Hawk Down, and that movie planted the seed that changed my life. Yes. Watching those men sacrificing their lives for another human being, putting their lives on the line, it just inspired me, that kind of courage that human beings have, and made me question this very worthless, selfish, meaningless existence I was living. And so almost overnight, stopped doing drugs, decided to join the Marines. It took me about 1.5 years to get in because I have a blood disorder that 2 doctors told me would kill me in boot camp. I have flat feet, scoliosis, all of these factors that were disqualifying. But post 9/11 world, here's a young kid who wants to go infantry. They found a place for me, which I'm very grateful for. But the Marines first taught me how to suffer. It taught me the beauty of going to war with the self and finding something within our soul to transcend that adversity. And not just for ourselves and for our own limitlessness, but for doing it for others. Right? In the Marines, in the military, you live for the good of the group, for your men and your mission. That's more important than your own well-being. And that's a beautiful thing, to experience that kind of tribe, to live in that culture. So, and then later on, I was deployed to Iraq in 2007 as an infantry Marine, where one of my jobs was to walk in front of our convoys looking for IEDs, for bombs, before they could be used on
combat engineer myself. So.
Roger that. Okay. So you know what that's like, but learned through all these experiences to master my relationship with fear, with struggle, with suffering, until I came back and a new one hit. Lost friends to deployment. I've lost junior Marines to suicide, and I struggled with life in the normal world. So I wanted to return to war. I started drinking heavily. Downing a bottle of vodka a day for days on end, until one morning after 5 days of binge drinking, I was seconds away from slitting my wrists. Yep. And that moment was the rock bottom moment in many ways I really needed to start my climb out of that abyss. And so I began researching neuroscience, psychology, spirituality, went on a deep path, confronting my own demons, doing that inner work, and finding peace, which is what led to my book, Fearvana, led to then me getting into outdoor sports big time and pushing all those edges, from running ultra marathons to climbing mountains to spending 10 days in a dark room by myself to confront that stillness in a deep way. And ultimately now the culmination of attempting this never before accomplished expedition in Antarctica. And 1 year ago, we met, almost 1 year ago to the day. We're about to be the 1 year anniversary. Went on our first date. And she's been, I couldn't do this without her now. She's been an invaluable part of the journey and, my life.
Nothing better to have somebody compliment you like that.
Yeah. I feel like it gives me chills, just the love. It's awesome.
She has it's a pretty cool story how we met too, but we can jump into that as and when.
I'd love to hear that.
I don't know how much time you guys have. Do you guys have like a strict hour or anything?
No, not at all.
We're good.
Phenomenal. Don't say that. We'll be here for like next 24 hours. I really wanted to go back to when you decided to turn things around, after you were suicidal, because I've had points, in the past year myself where I wasn't ever suicidal because I've had such incredible purpose from my kids and my wife. I have, in the grand scheme of things, I have every reason to be so appreciative, and I'm so fortunate, but doesn't mean I haven't been through very, very rigorous, real things. And, but I've always had someone there. And I was curious, when you were able to turn things around, did you have anybody that made a major impact in your life at that point?
Yeah, I was married actually at the time too. Now my ex-wife. So she was very supportive at the time. And my family was when they found out how dark it was. So I had good people helping me kind of guide me through that darkness.
A good support system.
Without going too deep into the weeds, that marriage ended because she got caught up in a cult. And that ended about 5 years ago now. Yeah. Okay. And so that I ended up breaking my sobriety after that happened. When it got pretty dark again, and not her fault. That's obviously on me. I take responsibility for that action, but thankfully rose back up and couldn't be in a better place with a better life right now. So
absolutely. Will you kick it off or something?
Yeah. Well, I kind of wanted to focus on Melissa. When you met Akshay, were you like, wow, this guy's crazy, this is like insane, I can't live like this? Or were you like, all right, this is crazy and awesome and I want a part of this life? And fell for him?
Oh, that's a great question. So to back up a little bit, I previously had been living in Portland, Oregon for 12 years, and we now live in Scottsdale, Arizona together. And I had kind of gone on my own spiritual path and journey as well, doing, different types of kind of more intense forms of meditation, specifically going to a week-long retreat that was neurofeedback and meditation, where I actually had a vision that I would meet my partner in Scottsdale, Arizona. So I broke my lease, moved on intuition, didn't know anyone, and moved to Scottsdale, Arizona. Yeah. So, and we had that first meeting, but even in our first meeting, we didn't actually have that movie moment. Like, it wasn't until we went deeper. I remember he was hosting a gathering at his house, and I went over and I saw this man with stitches in his finger that had told me he just cut off part of his finger preemptively for this journey. And he was pointing at a map, and I thought, interesting. And it wasn't until we actually went on a hike together where we got to spend any measurable time together. It was through the desert, 5.5 hours, 102 degrees. He was on an extended fast, 7 days. And I had not hiked before there. And so I had an allergic reaction that caused my eyes to swell shut. He didn't remember 80% of it. And it was actually on that hike where I fell in love with him, because we had an opportunity to go deep, and I got to hear who he was at his core. Even in this state, his primary concern was making sure that I was okay. And that's awesome. When I fell in love with him. So yes, to answer your question, when I first met him, I thought he was a little bit nuts, and I wasn't sure I was signing up for that ride until we really had that time to go deep and learn so much about each other in terms of the shared goals, the shared vision for life that we really had.
Yeah.
It's cool. It seems like that happened so early on and very quick for you guys, because a lot of times people maybe never get that deep, or it takes years for them to kind of dig through each other and, see who each other really is like on the inside.
And people put
so you're lucky. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. We think there's no better way. I mean, because we went super deep. I mean, by the second date, because she knew I was going to Antarctica, but we had gone on after that hike, she asked me out because she heard on a podcast that I was more afraid of going to war than I was of asking a woman out, which was true.
Or more afraid of asking a woman out.
More afraid of asking a woman out than I was of going to war. And so she was like, this guy, he's a clown, so let me just ask him out. So she asked me out. We went on the first date, went well. Second date, we had a long talk about us being together through this Antarctic journey. And just to us, there's kind of no better way to be. Start deep, go early. And it doesn't mean you can't be light and playful, but at least if you're compatible. And at this point in our journey, we're very, very self-aware enough to know who we are and what we stand for, what our values are, what our life wants to look like. I mean, as a young kid, I was an idiot. I didn't know all these things, but now we do. Yeah. So we could kind of get clear if there's any red flags. We're not going to waste time. But we knew early. And then 2 months, I proposed. 5.5 months, we got married. Amazing. And since then, we've been to Alaska, Iceland, and now we're in Norway. She's been all over the world with me as I've been training for Antarctica.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. I really want to travel, and I believe
someday we will.
I'm fully confident, I would love to be able to do this full time. Like that's a dream of mine.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of opportunity lately. That's just, we're finding an opportunity everywhere we look, and it's a really cool thing,
It just hasn't been that long. So be patient, go slow and do your thing, and don't expect anything to happen.
Well, and I think that you can kind of pull that from any aspect of life. Like I just took my 15-year-old and we did the biggest mountain in New York. We did 18.5-mile loop hike, and it was awesome. And it was cool because I'm in a very different point in my life where I'm so self-aware and I'm so appreciative of every little thing, and I'm taking pictures left and right, and it's cool to see my 15-year-old really kind of pull that out of me too. And he's just loving life, and it's awesome. It's really beneficial to learn that adversity is the most important tool that we have, and it really is. It does forge the iron.
Yeah, you almost need to welcome it and use it and learn from it, and makes you stronger.
If you can have that perspective, as you guys know, it's very empowering. It changes everything.
Absolutely
everything.
Yeah. So with you knowing that he was going to be gone for 110 days, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's going to be a spiritual journey for me too. That's really been my answer a lot of times when people ask, because I knew that right away. I mean, even before our first date, I knew what he was about to embark on. And interestingly enough, what I had gone to this meditation retreat to work through was anxious attachment. So what a better test and opportunity than to be with somebody who's going to be gone for 110 days doing this journey. So it was both, absolutely a little bit of fear, but there was the element also of gratitude of this getting to be an opportunity for me to really practice holding myself, to build a relationship where we go deep quickly and we can feel really confident in our relationship. I mean, we were talking about all of this in the first 3 dates, and we'd planned to at that time be together for the next 7 months, essentially. So we left no stone unturned in terms of what we were looking for, our values. We actually had both made lists before we ever met of the qualities we want in each person. And we shared those lists with each other, and we were 100% of each other's lists.
That's awesome that you say that.
No, it is awesome that you say that. Yeah, when I talk about Matt, like in my mind, I'd always have this list of like my perfect person, you want to say. And he is, like, we're all flawed and we have our little quirks and stuff, but like he is like my perfect person. And it's just weird. Beautiful. Like I manifested that and I knew what I wanted and I knew someday I would have it. But then when I actually got it, I was like, whoa, that's real.
Yeah. And I said out loud kind of recently, I remember laying in bed and I'm just like, there's literally not one thing I'd change about her. And like, that's such a cool feeling. Like not one thing, all the imperfections, there's hardly any of those, but no. I always say I'm a pretty decent person. She's better than me in every way, but it's just cool. Just compliment each other and her positivity over the past, especially going through those hard days, no matter how bad stuff has gotten, she would be annoyingly positive. There would be days where it is and like, so negative, and I would just, be done with the day. And
at least I would distract you and not be, upset or anything that happened. He's like annoyed with me. So at least it worked that way too.
Yeah. And there's such a power in that because, I realize that, if you don't have hope and you're not able to, see past whatever you're going through, it's very, very hard. But
well, I'm sure like Akshay, you probably have days where you're like, I'm just like tired or whatever, but you keep going, you keep pushing. And
I'm sure he's never tired.
And then I'm sure Melissa, you were probably like, no, you got this, so each other, you support each other and push each other. I can see that and feel that with how you guys are. Yeah.
Even just traveling with me, like we were, right after getting married, we went to Alaska for 3 months in a tiny remote cabin that was, we didn't have any friends in there. So it was basically just us in this remote cabin. It was right on a frozen lake. So I could go out and train, and she helps manage my macros, my diet. So essentially does almost managing life. Cause even right now, financially, I'm not making any money I make. I'm applying to the crossing fund because we have to raise a ton of money for the crossing. And I'm basically a full-time training. So she's also my sugar mama right now. We kind of joke, but we say jokingly, but also just how much she supports that she's kind of managing life and also every area. So I can focus my mind and body on the daunting task ahead to actually pull this thing off. The physical training, as you can imagine, is quite demanding. I mean, there's not a day that goes by the end of the day. I mean, she's me kind of hobbling around like an old person, because I'm always in some mild degree of pain.
How old are you?
From pushing hard. 39.
Okay, a couple years on me. All right, yeah. Okay.
So actually, that leads into my next question: is like, can you tell us a day in the life of both of you?
Sure. Yeah. It's been varied because of how much we've been everywhere, but I guess we can say it now since we'll at least present moment, because it's been altered when we're in Scottsdale versus Alaska versus, so we've been everywhere in the last 7 months together. But right now in Norway, I guess why don't you start with yours and I'll kind of jump into mine.
Yeah. So for me, because I'm very fortunate in that I can do, client work all kind of remotely. So in the mornings, I'm able to do work, start getting both of our breakfasts ready, calculating how he's going to get enough protein that day, oftentimes force feeding him, because the unique thing about Antarctica and any kind of polar travel is you have to train strength, you have to train endurance, and all doing it while fat, because he has to have weight to lose. So it's a bit of a running joke for us that I'm always trying to feed him more food and insist he finishes his plate.
I have to eat like an animal just to maintain, because I'm training quite hard, and to maintain and put on is the own challenge.
Yeah. And so as the day kind of begins, we just, I'm doing respective work. He's either out training, or I join him for a session at the gym or at the cross country ski center where he's been practicing and training. And then he'll often tire drag in the afternoon. And when I don't have meetings, I'll join him. I'll walk backwards as he drags his tires with ski poles. So we can still chat. We're quite the sight, and we get stopped quite a lot.
In every corner of the globe, wherever we do this. Yeah.
I can imagine.
And then, he's doing fundraising work. We're eating dinner, and that's pretty much our days.
Evenings we will chill a little bit,
we'll
just
relax a
our
little,
time.
watch some movies.
Yeah, our time a little bit. But usually my training will either be, as you said, gym, cross-country skiing, or tire dragging. And depending on the day, it's a combination of the two. So today was just a 5-hour skiing session. Tomorrow will be a long tire session and a gym session. So depending on the day, it's some combination of the three, and then fundraising work, because we're trying to raise money for this while training for it is quite a daunting task.
Yeah. You guys made a lot of progress. You guys are kind of, right there where you need to be, I believe, right?
So good news and bad news. We are, in a way, we crossed 615K, which is outstanding. Like, we could not do this without the incredible amount of people that have come together to support to get us that far. But the target has also gone up.
The target has gone up several 100,000.
Yeah, so, we just found this out a couple of weeks ago. ALE, which is Antarctica Logistics and Expeditions. Not only is this the first time in terms of just the physicality and mental challenge of what's ahead, but it's never been done logistically. To pull off an expedition like this is quite the logistical challenge as well. So they themselves were not the team, like ALE is the company that organizes all the logistics for this. They were not prepared for how not prepared. They were prepared, but they didn't expect it to be as daunting as it is to fly out that late in the season.
So they're extending the season essentially a month for him.
Just for me.
So the whole crew has to stay at the base to be able to pick him up. So now it's looking more around
closer to 1 million.
Ooh. So
you can do it. You can do it.
We'll do it.
Exactly. We're fighting.
We're fighting.
We're gonna make it happen. But we're very blessed. We just got 200K came in last week that put us in a good position. We're expecting a decent chunk again later this month. So we got a lot of irons in the fire, and a lot of people contributing even smaller amounts. People like just Friday, 2 days ago, we got somebody contributed 1,000, another 5,000. Sometimes even it's 100. All those little bits have added up, to make us to get to this point. And because ultimately also, I think what's inspired people, whether they're contributing $30 or $200,000, is that they see this journey is not just about me being alone on the ice, right? Like, yes, obviously I'm going to spiritually get a lot from it. Otherwise I wouldn't do it if I'm not also, like, every goal I believe should have a selfish and a selfless level. They should have a target selfishly and selflessly. What are you seeking from this? So for me, selfishly, it's a very spiritual journey to tap into my own inner divinity, to awaken that inner Buddhahood that we all have within, and to find something in the human soul that I haven't found before, and to go that deep into the edges of solitude and suffering to see what I unearth. And selflessly, it's my responsibility to share that with the world, whether it be on podcasts like yours or speaking on stages. I've worked with people. And when people do things, and separate from even me, it's like the Roger Bannister 4-minute mile, right? When people do things that expand the human potential, it leaves a mark in each of us. I mean, the amount of stories of people pushing their own boundaries that has helped inspire me in my own self-belief to even train for this the way I am, and then embark upon this journey, is because of the countless number of people that have come together to plant, their spirit into my own soul, that I have that power to now take on this journey. And similarly, when we tell this story, we're filming a documentary around it, it will leave a mark on others who then can find something in themselves to push. I mean, just the other day, a little while ago, I did a talk and somebody heard my talk, was so inspired, lost all this weight, and went and hiked Everest Base Camp, So it touches people's souls as other stories have touched mine, and collectively we're greater than the sum of each individual part, and that's what this journey is about, is what we can do together to really, because I mean, separate from me doing it, the journey itself, when pulled off, it will be one of the greatest feats of endurance. It's like, it's the last journey in Antarctica that hasn't been accomplished yet. So whoever does it, the point is that journey is quite a epic feat to pull off, and it will leave a mark.
Do you ever sit back and think, like, who you are? Like, you're the one doing this right now in this whole world, like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Early on, especially early in the training journey, there was a lot of moments of who am I, in the sense of, there's legendary polar explorers, polar adventurers that have been mentors to me, that I've looked up to, that I've learned from, who've done epic deeds in the Arctic and Antarctic. And so there was kind of this, none of them did this. Who am I to think I can, kind of thing, So that was there for a part until it moved. And even I always say this, like, doubt is not inherently a bad thing, because we don't have to be defined by our thoughts and our feelings. So I can have a feeling, I can have a thought, but I don't have to let that shape my actions. I can move forward in the face of it. And when you go to war with yourself enough, another one of my mantras is belief is built on the battlefield. So you don't just get self-belief by standing in a mirror being like, I'm awesome. You have to go to war with yourself to earn that self-belief. And you don't have to believe in yourself to even get started. You can start by just leaping into the arena. And when you leap in the arena, you're going to get a little hurt, and that's okay. Like I always say, be a bull in a china shop, get hurt, run into things, and that's how you go to war. That's how you build it to the point now that I'm like, this was my destiny. I was destined for this. I've trained like such an animal for it. This was meant for me to pull this off. And not in some egotistical way. In a way, you kind of have to tap into that ego too. Though. Yeah. Like ego is not inherently bad. If you want to do something great, you have to believe you're great. You have to believe that, right? Yeah. And then you earn that. But you can also be humble at the same time. Ego and humility can coexist. And I think every great, like if you look at the Kobe Bryants of the world, Kobe would be like, I'm the baddest motherfucker alive, right? Like he knew how awesome he was, but he was so humble to always be looking at the next mistake. Where could he learn from? He had other mentors that he learned from. Similarly, it's the same way with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I've battled. Sorry, you can go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, even with our relationship, in some ways I joke that I was destined also to find him and to meet him. Even my hobbies around biohacking, things around nutrition, everything that I really found interest in, I now get to apply to my relationship. So I often say I found my purpose in supporting him, in so many ways, in the ways we've found that we complement each other and the bizarre similarities that made us uniquely perfect for each other.
Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wanted to ask, do you ever still deal with like an imposter syndrome at all anymore whatsoever? Because I have struggled with that severely bad over the past, mainly over the past, like since we started this podcast, worrying about judgment, worrying about what people think. Like I struggled heavily with it until honestly, I think talking to Mindset Mary's podcast, actually before going on her podcast, we talked for an hour, like, just a little get to know each other. She mentioned imposter syndrome, like being a beneficial thing. It's a good sign. And it changed and warped my perception. That little conversation with her, it changed my imposter syndrome from being this thing that I've been battling to something I'm just kind of embracing and accepting.
She like made you think different.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a little conversation.
Right. But it's like you're growing and changing and you're like learning who you are again because you're constantly changing.
Yes.
So you're like, you don't feel like yourself.
Yeah.
And that throws you off a little bit maybe.
Yeah. I was just curious, is that something you ever did have to deal with going into who you've become today? Because I imagine you're entirely different.
And to the point of what you're saying, I think imposter syndrome is a good thing. I mean, I like being in rooms where I'm the dumbest person in the room. If I'm constantly in a room where I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. You know? And when you are the dumbest person in the room, it's very normal for imposter syndrome. I just spoke at an event where I was a speaker, and I speak more about the sort of mindset of mastery and spirituality, but in terms of entrepreneurship, I mean, they were 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs, possibly even billionaires in that room. I was the least successful entrepreneur in that room, and I loved it. I mean, hearing them talk, learning from them, right? Like the wisdom there. So I think imposter syndrome, like anything, there's not a bad or good. This, like I said, that's the whole essence of Fearvana, is that fear, stress, anxiety, sadness, guilt, these emotions we quote unquote deem as bad. They're not bad. They just are. And imposter syndrome is part of that. Even like one of my big beefs in the personal development world, they always say, overcome your limiting beliefs. I always like to say, fuck your limiting beliefs, because the idea of overcoming your limiting beliefs means you have to listen to them as real. If a belief isn't serving me, I don't have to listen to it as real. I can step into the arena anyway, right? Okay, I don't believe I can do this. Who gives a shit? I'm going to go and do it anyway. Yeah. And I'll push myself, and then you build it, and then then it expands, right? What you believe expands, and it expands. So as far as to answer that question about do I still feel it, like now where like I'm at a point now where I believe in my ability to pull this off. But that didn't start like this. Even when I began this journey of doing it, I've been training for this directly for 4 years. Right? Wow. Directly. And in many ways, it's a culmination of decades of adventuring, but directly for 4 years. And it didn't start off like this. I didn't believe the way I do believe now in my ability to pull this off. But do I still have fear? Fear of failure is huge. We have given so much to this. She's given so much. We've given so much money, emotions. I've lost 2 fingers to this thing. So much has gone to this that what if I don't succeed? But that's a good thing. Fear of failure is valuable fuel. On those days where I don't feel like getting out there, good. Remember, what if you fail? Get your ass out the door. It's valuable. Everything is valuable if you choose to make it valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the failure of failure and the fear of failure, and you know, like getting up on those days that it's the hardest. Those are the most valuable to me. You know, I've started running in the rain, and you know, just pushing myself to the uncomfortable. And like we've been running on the beach, running in the deep sand and stuff instead of the hard packed sand. And I realize there's so much value in all that.
I feel like I'm like, that is so hard for me to run on the sand. But then I think about what you're doing and I'm like, Monica, don't even complain right now.
Well, I'm glad it inspired you.
Yeah, to be that new reference point, right? Yes. And that's the goal, is to create a reference point. And even with us, you know, getting so many questions about our relationship, our goal is to be a reference point. I mean, he's going to be gone for a total of 6 months. This is our first year of our relationship, you know, and that's a challenge a lot of people see as crazy or daunting. But our hope is that, yeah, we can do this. So maybe those week apart will feel a little bit easier, even from some friends. They've kidded me a little bit. They said, wow, I can't even complain that my partner is going to be gone for a week on a business trip, because how long is he going to be gone for?
Yeah. We've only ever did a month.
About a month or so.
Yeah. I went to pre-deployment training. I think three different trainings
in the beginning of our relationship. And I was like, it's so long.
That was hard. That was
I can imagine. It is. Yeah. We did our first.
We did our first month apart.
Yeah. First it was. That was in Iceland when I was on expedition out there, and then in August I go to Greenland for a month to do another expedition, a ski crossing, and then in November is the big one, the 4 months in Antarctica. So
where are you going to stay, Melissa, when he's doing his venture?
So I'll be based in where we live currently, Scottsdale, Arizona. So I'll be there with community and friends. And
I was going to say with your family and stuff, hopefully, you know. So
my family's up in Washington, actually, but I'll definitely go back and visit them quite a bit over the holidays and things.
You have your support. So
exactly.
Good.
Yeah, no,
be gone for lots of holidays: Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day.
Close to missing my birthday.
You can make up for it when he comes
back.
I see a lot of value, and that's kind of like what we're doing with this podcast. I get so much value out of talking to people that it's kind of like you were talking about, Akshay, about people being smarter than you know, and being the dumbest person in the room. And I feel that all too much, even at my job. You know, like I just started a new job where I'm working with people that are not even, you know, just on paper. They're more intelligent than I am. They operate at a different level than I do. And granted, I believe I'm a good employee, and you know, I genuinely care and enthusiastic and I'm positive. But you know, with this podcast, you know, just being able to converse with people that are so much farther along with you than you are, and like you guys, you know, being self-aware, because I think we've broken through and we're becoming more aware every day. And we meditate. Sure. We've been using virtual meditation. It's a VR trip. It's called. It's really cool. It's one of the many things that we kind of started to utilize to invest in ourselves. Back September, I believe, because I've never meditated before. And I keep hearing successful people. I think just about everybody I've ever listened to, they all talk about meditation. And I'm just like, how is that not more pushed upon to the public? Because I believe 100%, not a high number. I mean, 100% of people could benefit from it. It's just a matter of it being, you know, implemented and applied to their lives. But unless society doesn't want people to be in a good mental state, you know, because there's that double-edged sword, not to go into the negativity, but you know, you don't really make money off of, you know, healthy people,
happy, healthy people.
So, but, no, this is awesome. And, you know, we utilize, you know, just even thinking about you doing your journey across this, across Antarctica, last weekend, I wanted to go outside and run and exercise and stuff. And I'm like, man, I don't really feel like it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, man, this guy's over there training. I went down, hit the heavy bag for 40 minutes. And, you know, I went for an 8-mile run, which, you know, and it's just cool, you know, just to think, and you can't even imagine how many people are you influencing out there. It's like a ripple effect you've created and you're creating.
Definitely. It's really funny though, because I think I saw a video with you with your tires going up a little hill, maybe probably not a little hill, up a hill. And we have a little hill that we run on. And I was like, oh my gosh, you can have some tires. I'll have like maybe one tire, but we should try it.
It's pretty far away. It's a good 2 miles from our house, so it's a lot of driving.
I would love to just try it. You know, just a little like hair of what you do, just to see what you do. Would be fun.
Funny story about that too. So when we were in Alaska training, I mean, I was with sleds. That was actually not tires, but sleds on skis with the harness in snow. kind of similar to Antarctica. And I got up to a point where I was dragging a 560-pound sled, so way heavier than Antarctica, just as training. But one day she gets out there on the sled, and after about 10 minutes...
Was it, what, 80?
I think 90 pounds,
90
yeah, something
pounds.
like that. So after 10 minutes, and this is her honest reaction, not even just saying this in a funny way. She goes, "You have to be mentally ill to want to do this for 110 days." I reminded her, this is who you married, for the record. So.
That's so funny. That's probably something I would say if he was doing that too.
It's very, like, once I'm done with Antarctica, I will not be doing tire dragging as my training. It's mind-numbingly monotonous and slow. And you're, especially the heavier the tires, then you're moving painfully slow.
There's no glide. You're just dragging this very heavy tire. And it gives me an appreciation, though. Very early into our dating too, I put on the harness, started dragging some tires, and thought, this man has more mental strength than I realized. Because it's the monotony. And that's often too where there's some misconception that what he's doing because of the danger or adrenaline, but it's really about the suffering and the transcendence of that suffering and the luxury and the burden that his mind has to be able to wander, because there's no stimuli. It's just flat white nothing that he'll be in for 110 days.
Right.
That's what makes polar travel more. I mean, one polar explorer in the 1900s said, polar exploration is at once the cleanest and most isolated way of having a bad time, which has been devised. So I've done a lot of things. I've run ultramarathons, climbed mountains, been to war. But in terms of just voluntary suffering, there's nothing like polar travel. For the reason she said, you're doing the same damn thing every single day. Unlike mountain climbing, which it often gets compared to in Everest, as you go up and down Everest, the views are different. The terrain is dynamic. It puts you more into flow because you can fall. So your mind's kind of right there on the next step in front of you. In Antarctica, it's flat white nothingness. For 80% of the journey, there's no mountains. There's nothing to look at. Every day you will wake up and it looks the exact same. And that's mentally daunting. And that's kind of the thing that draws me, is that navigating that challenge. Obviously, it's physical as well, because you're dragging about a 400-pound sled for 10 to 12 hours a day. But the mental monotony of doing that is in a way kind of a meditation. But it's quite the challenge, to say the least.
What are the primary risks associated with it? Obviously the cold, obviously the environment. But as far as like crevasse and stuff like that, is that a major risk there?
There are crevasses for two very small parts of the journey that I'll be on, not consistently. I have to go up a glacier to get onto what's called the polar plateau, where the South Pole is, and then go down a glacier on the other side to hit the ice shelf. And each glacier does have crevasses, but on the one side, it's very well mitigated. The route has a lot of GPS data. It's, I wouldn't say frequented. When I say frequented by Antarctic terms, so that means like 5-10 people, I think, but relatively, by Antarctic polar travel terms, one of my friends has actually been up the glacier. But on the other glacier, that one has only been set foot by a handful of people. So then that one is a little bit more, but even then, there's a lot of satellite imagery. My friend has data on that glacier. So while you obviously can't eliminate risks, they're highly mitigated through data and intel from others who've been on those on the crevasse terrain that I will be walking on.
Awesome. And animals, there's no animals out there because nothing can really live out there other than penguins.
Yeah, so penguins are only in one corner of Antarctica, but most of Antarctica has nothing. People often think there's polar bears, but the Arctic actually means bear, and Antarctic means no bear. So you only find polar bears in the Arctic, but in Antarctica, I will, for portions of the journey, be geographically the most isolated life form. Not even isolated human being, but isolated life form. For hundreds of miles, nothing around me.
That's incredible.
On Earth. Yeah, it's going to be pretty wild.
So I wanted to go back about, you just being alone and all the white, just walking. So like your mind can wander and stuff, but it's got to be hard to not focus on like pain and stuff that you're feeling as you're going through. So trying not to focus on whatever's hurting. You're trying to focus on staying positive and taking one step at a time.
Yeah. Great question, because that's the biggest challenge, is what do you do with your mind during those moments? Because I've been on polar expeditions before, and sometimes you'll be skiing for 10 minutes and in your mind you think I've done an hour, and you're like, fuck, I look at my watch, it's only been 10 minutes, So navigating that dance with time, but even that experience when you're in pain, because you're in pain you'll be in some mild degree of pain often from and there's different ways to navigate it. But so sometimes I'm escaping the pain, maybe listening to music, just feeling tremendous gratitude, doing whatever I can to escape it. Other times I'm actually going deeper into it. I want to feel it, like remembering that if I want it easy, why the hell would I ski across Antarctica?
Right.
So in that moment when it sucks, you're to remind yourself, this is why you're here. This is the moment you wanted. Like, this is what you are choosing this journey for. So thank you for this opportunity. Is what I'll even say, to me, it's also like, you might have heard this expression in war, right? There's no atheists in foxholes. Yeah. When do people come closest to God? We all have our own version of what God means, but when we're in pain, when we're in hell, that's when we seek, that's when we call to God, when we pray to God. And so these experiences in many ways, and that depth of suffering and struggle, you come closest to the divine, because that's when you have to tap into something beyond yourself, something so transcendent in order to keep moving forward. And so remembering that those are the moments, that it's all about. Now, obviously, some days are incredibly hard, even training, when I'm like...
Yeah. There's even days where he'll say, thank you for this opportunity. And we both do. That's become a mantra for both of us when either of us is feeling like the challenge, the struggle of that day. This is an opportunity. And so treating each of those moments as that moment, and for me, even, I often have said that I look at my life like a movie, and I'll say things like, I can't wait to see what the writers do next when things are really going sideways. And that's like a way to reframe, right? To pull out and have that third eye, that third perspective of, okay, this could be that moment that I look back on that changed everything. Yeah. This could be the moment the greatness, you step into that next version of yourself.
Yeah.
Kind of a curiosity is an invaluable virtue.
Absolutely.
To move through adversity. I can't, people sometimes ask me, who you're going to be after Antarctica. And I don't know. And I love that. Like, that's the curiosity. I can't wait to see who I will become and what I will find.
Yeah. I think, I was just having a conversation at work the other day with one of my coworkers, and, life has gotten so easy because of technology. And I think because of technology and medicine and everything, it's pulling away a lot of the adversity, I think, that we naturally are meant to go through. So, there's people, I think that's why a lot of anxiety issues that are out there, and panic disorders, and you name it. People have it, not easy in completely, but go 200 years ago when there's real adversity, when, how many people died from child labor and stuff like that, or giving birth. Things are dramatically different, but I think there's such a value in pushing yourself, and maybe not crossing Antarctica for everybody, but
it's certainly not the only path to enlightenment.
Because my antidepressant, which I think this should be publicly talked about by everybody, the biggest antidepressant for me and a lot of people I know is just physical exercise, just getting out there, make yourself sweat. So how many people don't exercise or don't do anything because they don't want to sweat, if they don't have the initiative to just go do stuff?
It's hard to get up and go. You just need that little push. And once you're doing it, like, there's been so many times he's like, let's go running. I'm like, oh, fine. And then it's like my best run.
So
that's cool.
A lot of times,
A lot of times. Yeah.
We always like to say, if you look for hard, your life becomes easy. But if you look for easy, your life becomes hard. And we know people who will just, anything that's hard, they'll run away from. And they're going to be, it's, to me, the kind of hell when you look back on your life one day, realize you never actually made or took a risk, never tried to grow, never tried to fight for your dreams, whatever they may be. And you look back on your life, that's a hell that I never want to experience.
I've always been that person, to be a big risk taker. And, I've Eddie Pierno said, ready, fire, aim, instead of ready, aim, fire. I don't know if are you familiar with Eddie Pierno at all?
I have heard that.
Actually, he's the reason why I'm talking to you, arguably, because, I actually Googled Mindset Mary's podcast because she interviewed Eddie Pierno. And then I watched another one of her episodes, which happened to be you. And, he's been a huge inspiration to me, and, and just somebody that's just got vulnerable, because I realize the power in being vulnerable with somebody. Because I, over the past, year and a half going through adversity, just reaching out to other people, because I've always been kind of an open book, and I've always been, one to, like talking about what I'm going through, just because if I'm able to make it through my hard days, which some of them are very hard, very dark, and if I'm able to go to work and smile and be happy and enjoy my life with my beautiful wife and kids, like, anybody could do it. And I really mean that. I think anybody can make it through any adversity. And, we can all find the excuse not to. We can all find the excuse to end it and quit. And I very well could have. And, when you put yourself out there and you show other people how strong you can be, or, is it Jordan Peterson said, be the strongest man at your dad's funeral? you know, people do respect that when they see how good you're doing, when you're going through absolute hell and you're on the battlefield. Like my storm's still not over. Our storm's still not over. We still are pushing one foot in front of the other. And it's awesome. It's awesome to see how, you know, I've reached out to people that are doing, you know, going through more than me, and, you know, and they're doing it. And, you know, I just think if more people talk about it, it just makes it better.
People shouldn't be ashamed of stuff that they're going through, because we all have stuff that we're going through.
Yeah.
Like
and it's really important to remember that. Yeah. Sorry,
Oh, I was just going to say, like, back, you know, in my past, I went through some shit and like bad stuff. And just to be thankful and blessed where I am at with him and my family and my life now is like an understatement. And eventually I'll like tell my story. But if I know it sounds so like cliche or whatever, if I can get through it, like anybody can. Yeah. Because I'm not like the strongest or smartest person, you know, but that had made me so much stronger. So with all the stuff that he's going through, that we're going through right now together, like I'm trying to be his rock and be that person he can
succeed.
I'm trying.
Yeah. Succeeding.
Yeah. But it just, I'm so much, I think, calmer and think differently because I've already been through my hell. So I can kind of help him and give him advice with what he's going through.
Yeah. And we're at 8 years now. We're going on 8 years, and she's, you know, her story and what she's been through. Yeah, I really believe that she was put into my life to show me like, hey, I did it. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
So that's beautiful.
Yeah, you can really feel your love too.
Yeah,
I love that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, definitely. Still in the honeymoon phase. 8 years later, it's pretty crazy.
That's awesome.
We believe it never ends.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to.
No, it doesn't have to.
Love that. I love that, Chelsea. Same way.
Yeah, I love that. I love seeing other couples, you know, that are dorky and stuff, you know, like we are. And it seems like you guys are the same.
Yeah, no, actually,
we definitely are.
So she listened to part of the book. She fell asleep, by the way. No, it was late at night.
It was
it was 11 o'clock on she had to work the next morning, but I'm up late like I always am, and I'm listening to it. And then on the way to work, I've been listening to it on the way to and from work. I think I'm in chapter 3, but I thought it was really cool how you talk about, you know, like picking on your wife. I love it because I bug the shit out of her. I pick on her so bad, and you know, it's fun, and I think it's really important.
Be playful. We are very, very playful.
Yeah.
That would be an understatement.
I love that so much.
Yeah, he gets me constantly, like to a point where he says oftentimes he doesn't get his energy in the morning if he hasn't made enough jokes, and it's really true. And it's that sense of humor too that allows him to do the things that he does, and you know, the best way through is laughter. Whatever it is you're working through. And, you know, we even talk about how if there's something that you can't laugh about, that's actually an area to look at. That's a potential trigger to work through. That's an area of growth. Yeah. Like even in our relationship.
Yeah.
It's somewhere to like, we both can make fun of, I mean, even in my friend group, I am the guy who bears 80 to 90% of the shit talk. It's all directed towards me. And as a result of her being with me, now it's all like funneled onto her too. But that's to her point, you know, if you can't laugh at yourself about something, that's a good place to say there's some insecurities there that you can work on. When you get to the point that you can laugh at yourself about anything, even the things that you're bad at. I mean, like I shared the story about how I was more scared of asking a woman out. There was a time in my own life I was too embarrassed to talk about how I was scared of asking a woman out or dating. Now I just don't care, right? Like I know the areas that I shine at, and I'm confident in my entire self that here I can say these are things I'm bad at, and you can own it and you can laugh about it, right? Yep. And so that's that. When you can laugh at that, it gives you a sense of confidence in who you are, because nothing breaks you. You know, when you can laugh at things, you become unbreakable.
Yeah,
absolutely. Even in the first few weeks of our dating, I got called every name under the sun for deciding to date him.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely crazy. You must be crazier.
You must be psycho.
You must be psycho. Everything you can imagine. And it was such a beautiful moment of also recognition of the growth that I had been through at that point, of saying, this is really unfazing. And in my mind, this was even more fuel to to show them what we could do and what we could be, because I believed in us so much.
Right. And so like you guys are like glowing and so happy. So it's like, you know, all those people thought you were crazy. Like, look at you now.
Yeah.
Well, they thought that too.
Yeah. When we first got together, we both publicly made a claim how we're never going to fight. And 1 month in, everybody, like my friends especially, like, bullshit. That's not going to happen. You don't know what you're talking about. And here we are almost a year later.
And not for a lack of talking about the hard things too. Like we've had every hard conversation, especially with all the travel, the financial aspect of what we're doing, all of it. Like we had to go deep super quickly. All the things people would typically fight about, we talked about, and we went deep very quickly, and we made a commitment. I think it was only a few dates in to never fight. And to do that by always agreeing to bring up potential issues, any causes of friction, anything before it could fester.
We have challenging conversations.
And we do. We have tough conversations.
Meeting alone time. You know, she early on, she's like, "What's next after Antarctica? You know, are you going to be gone every a few months?" So that was a challenging conversation to have as someone who's an adventurer. You know, but it was challenging for her and challenging for me. But that's how you move through things. You can navigate challenges without it being a fight. You know, and that comes from self mastery first. We both have to have mastery over our own. We're far from perfect, obviously, but some degree of mastery over our own emotions to not be reactive, but to respond. You know?
And communicating.
Like,
people don't communicate; they just like bite back so quickly without thinking.
Exactly.
So much is in our control. So much.
Like we've had fights, but we communicate so much.
And that's
So we don't.
That's okay. That's how you move through it, is to communicate. You know. So that's what we do. Like every time there's a hard conversation, we bring it up so we can have it, as opposed to, like you said, if you don't communicate, it just festers and and then it's going to explode later, instead of just saying, "Hey, here's the thing I'm struggling with," and then moving through it. You know.
Yeah. No, I've always been the person where if there's any elephant in the room, I have to put a spotlight on until it's gone. I have to.
You know?
Same.
And if we do have a disagreement or anything like that, it's like, then I'm, we'll go to bed. She just passes right out. She's asleep in like 4 seconds. And then I'm like, she's sleeping because she doesn't care.
No, I do care. I'm just tired.
I feel you.
And then he'll get angry and I'll feel bad because he thinks I don't care. And then we are up all night talking, In
the grand scheme of things, though, like we never hardly ever argue.
Yeah, not really.
It's pretty
Nothing
awesome.
to really fight about.
And disagreements are normal, right? Like that's a part of it. We're two different human beings, had different perceptions, different experiences, different triggers. But I think it's like, to your point earlier about that self-awareness, even when I would bring different things up, I'd say, okay, I know this is based on my past negative experiences with being cheated on or what have you, but that has nothing to do with present moment, but this is still an insecurity that I have. And then we're able to address it, but only from that place of recognition of, okay, I have this thing that's still a trigger for me, but the awareness to say, this is not to do with you. So really making a point of never making it the other person. It's you, your partner, and the issue, never you against your partner. And I think that's the distinction for us.
Yeah, I love that.
And also to somebody listening, if you do fight, it's not
something
we're
bad.
not it's
We're
not,
not
it's okay.
that.
There's a point to say that, like, okay, got it. How can I learn to improve? There's always room for growth, right? And that's what even we teach. Like, one of our friends was the only one who asked us months later, how do you actually make that happen? Instead of saying, if you hear something that triggers you, instead of being like bullshit, and if you feel that, okay, you don't have to respond that way. Be curious instead of judgmental, because now there's a learning opportunity, So if somebody's listening and says we do fight a lot, okay, don't beat yourself up. That's happened. But now what can I learn from this to make sure that the next time it doesn't go down the same way? And maybe we fight, once less per week or whatever the number may be, but now we're improving. Got it. How can I learn? Right. So there's something to always be learned, to say, like you said, it's about us versus the issue. And like you all said, sometimes when you're saying, when you're thinking, what is that other person might be feeling angry, is that mind reading thing, that a lot of couples do, and a lot of, even in rom-coms, rom-coms is like, you should just know what your partner needs. Most people don't know what we need, let alone what somebody else needs,
So
like we're self-aware people and we haven't mastered that all the time, so communicate that instead of expecting the other person to just know what you want. Things like that will help move you forward.
No, absolutely.
1
second. I have a couple of questions lined up. I got some individual questions for each one of you. One of them for you, Akshay, is, you've spoken about fear as a universal human experience. In the face of extreme isolation and danger in Antarctica, how do you envision fear manifesting? What tools from your mindfulness practice will you draw upon to transfer fear into a source of connection rather than isolation?
Great question. So as far as now, now I'm terrified. I would say the biggest fear is actually failure. I'm scared that I'm scared that I won't be. I've given so much into this, so much of my life to this. Other people have given so much, and I won't be able to pull off the distance in time. But one of my many mantras is when you engage it, fear propels you to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
Fear propels you to prepare. So one of the things I even did for Antarctica is, okay, what am I scared of? What's the thing that could go wrong? We always talk about positive visualization, but a really valuable tool is also negative visualization. Visualize every single thing that could go wrong so you can address it. Astronauts do this all the time, especially in my line of work where there's severe consequences for things going wrong, but this applies to every line of work, because in the Antarctic realm, when you have something go wrong, it's felt immediately. It's what psychologists call an immediate return environment. So something goes wrong and there's severe consequences, at the most extreme case, death. But I've trained enough to make sure that, like I don't lose my tent or things like that. So that I don't see happening. But the point is, you feel the effect of consequences immediately. In this world, there's delayed return. It's called a delayed return environment. So for example, I could work my ass off. I could get a good grade on this test. I still don't know if I'll get into college. Right? I could do well in this job. I still don't know if I'm going to get that raise, so on and so forth. But the point is recognizing that it now allows you to turn what's a delayed return environment into an immediate return environment. So I might not have a consequence today if I skip that gym one day, who cares? No big deal. But that there is a consequence. You might not feel it immediately, but it builds up. It builds a pattern. It builds an identity of I'm someone who doesn't finish and doesn't honor my own word. Right. So that's something to look at. Now we're at a point, I'm at a point where obviously I'm good enough to honor my own word. I've trained pretty hard, but the fear is always there and I'm always engaging it. So on expedition, I will have that fear, the big fear of can I pull this off? But that's going to help drive me of saying, got it. I'm scared that maybe I didn't put enough hours on the day. Let me suffer one more hour. If I suffer for one more hour, and that's another way to navigate that fear, is to bring it down to the next step. It's hard to imagine 110 days out in Antarctica. It's damn near impossible to imagine that. But when I'm out there on day 50, instead of thinking I have 50 days left, can I just do one more day? And then when I wake up in that day, let me just do 1 hour. And sometimes I'll even trick my brain on long training sessions. Because if I think about, I have to go, even this morning, I didn't sleep fully. And if I think about 5 hours of skiing, going around the same damn track, it's like, oh man, I don't want to do 5 hours monotonous. All right, you know what? I'm just going to go over to the ski ring and I'll just do a few laps. Let me just do 1 hour. So you can trick your brain into bringing in the first step in front of you, and then you do 1 hour, then 2. And at this point, I know I'm going to hit the 5. It's a given. But at least to trick that mindset to get out the door and reduce it to the first few moments in front of you. But the point coming back to is that fear is invaluable fuel.
Yes.
I want to be scared now, and I will be scared in Antarctica, and that'll help push me.
Awesome. Say again, this one is also for you, Akshay. In my own experience, the validation of achieving milestones or connecting with influential people, like having you on this podcast, has helped quiet my inner critic. How has validation, whether from external sources or internal self-acceptance, played a role in your journey?
Great question. I think, earlier on, the validation was more from external sources, helped get me to a point. I wasn't always this confident, but now the validation is from within, and that validation is sometimes as simple as, all right, nice work, you did what you had to do today. Now you move on to the next thing. As a Marine, also, I'm sure you can relate to our self dialogue being also very critical. Like, come on, you piece of shit, you can work harder. That kind of that is also sometimes my go-to place. But that's the thing, is you have to find what works for you, and depending where you are in your journey. And again, no right, wrong, good, bad. If you are earlier on in that internal mastery, external validation can help fuel you tremendously, at least get you to that point. And that's okay if that's the case. It can help fuel you. But now I'm like, and I'm not saying I don't not value when someone acknowledges me. Like when she says, I'm proud of you, you pushed hard, or somebody says, my parents say I'm proud of you, my trainer says you did great. It's not like I don't love that. Obviously, who wouldn't love feeling acknowledged, right? But now, especially, the core validation is to come from within. And that's where I use it. I mean, I think you have to celebrate the little victories to keep moving forward onto the next victory. So nice job, I hit my weekly target, awesome. But like for me, it's a constant duality. I think the idea of she thinks I may push it too far, but but like not being enough thing, I think is a good thing. We all have some version of not being enough. I'm constantly, to the point that I think some think is unhealthy, but it works for me. I'm constantly like, I didn't do enough.
Yeah.
How am I not doing enough? Should I be doing more? But that shit is fuel.
Yeah. No,
So you can have that duality coexist that, all right, I did XYZ, awesome, nice work, but how can I keep doing more? Where am I missing? What's the next gap? Where am I still,
every day.
Not pushing hard enough? And if you lose either one of those, that can create a problem. Both coexisting as one will help fuel you to higher levels of mastery.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even with that too, we hiked up Mauna Kea, which is the largest. Is it the largest mountain in Hawaii?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Largest mountain in Hawaii. And it was so interesting at the end. And by the way, I was an indoor girl before we got together. I have since become an outdoor girl. And we got to the top of this mountain. And, when we were talking about what our internal dialogue was, radically different. We both got up the mountain. His dialogue was very self-berating, one might say. And I was telling myself, this gets to be easy. Left foot. Right foot. This gets to be easy. So entirely different dialogue, but you find what works for you. So maybe the self-congratulation is really helpful for you, or maybe it is the you're not enough, get up and keep moving. That really works. And so finding that different dialogue and really understanding what works for you and what tool at what time has been really interesting to see the differences. And I think that that's valuable.
And the only way to figure that out is you have to step into the arena. Like, you can listen to a podcast, read a book, and all those can provide sparks. But the only way to find your own version of that internal dialogue that works for you, because like she said, we both got to the summit, but our dialogue was different. So is hers right or mine wrong? No, we both have our own flavor that works for us. But how do you know that? You have to step in the arena to figure that out, to say, hey, this works. Oh, you know what? This doesn't work. I don't like that. That didn't help me. But you step in the arena enough, you start to figure out how to shape your own internal dialogue in a way that fuels you as opposed to hinders you.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You mentioned the whole feeling the validation. Like, that has been so critical.
Talk about that type of stuff a lot.
Yeah. I think it's more so for me, because I think she's a lot less worried about judgment, what people think. But, because there's been a lot of times where I'm like, man, like, I've been kind of obsessing over this whole podcast thing. I was waiting for her to like roll her eyes. But it's really given us purpose, though. And recently, between having Rodney Norman and Nanea Reeves, I mean, this guy Rodney Norman, I don't know if you're familiar with who he is. He drove 4 hours. He was in the Marine Corps as well. He's a professional comedian, motivational speaker. He drove 4 hours to be on our podcast to come here. Wow. And I was just like, I was so humbled by him offering to do that. And and we went and we filmed at a local restaurant to promote that restaurant, and we brought him out to dinner and stuff. And it was so cool. And it's just is all we've been doing is asking, and then trying not to, come across too pushy or anything like that. But like Melissa, when you responded, I'm like, I think I woke her up. I'm pretty sure I woke her up late at night.
Sleeping, and I don't sleep like all the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I work full time 9-to-5 job, and then we get sports and kids, and then so if I'm ever doing anything, normally it's really late. Normally it's 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And
but then you're like, he had told me that he reached out and stuff, and then he said that you responded, and I was like, wait, what? Like, seriously? Are you? That's crazy.
But it's just that little validation for me has really helped, and changing my perspective about imposter syndrome and stuff. But just thinking, hey, like my good friend who was on our episode 11, he said, he's like, you're only schizophrenic, manic depressant if you fail. He's like, otherwise you're good.
But there's been a lot of times where he wants to like post something or reach out to someone, and he's like second guessing himself and sitting there with his phone. I'm like, just do it. If they don't answer, that's fine. If people don't like your short that you're posting, that's fine. There's people out there that love it, and you love it.
I mean, you take the risk to ask, and somebody says no. Worst case, you're in the same exact position.
Exactly.
That's how I got the Dalai Lama to write the foreword for my book. I was an unknown author, unknown, no brand. I reached out and asked. And there's ways to do it smart and strategically and stuff like that. Obviously, there's sort of tactics, but the key is I love that you actually did it. That you actually asked, because that's how you can get it. That's how you can get the result. Otherwise, you're never going to get if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Absolutely.
But he's doing so good with that. Like, he reaches out to people all the time. Like, I'm very, very bad at it, but he is always reaching out. And that's why we're getting so many people, I think, on our podcast.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Because you're
And
not
also just
giving up.
remembering that nothing great happens alone. You know, we didn't raise
Absolutely.
600K because I didn't ask. I asked freaking everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know? And when you share your vision, people, like most good people, want to be, they'll support, they'll want to be part, they'll want to help, you know? So
And they want to reward the courage too.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Because most people don't even ask.
Yeah.
I'm scared to.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like that no that they're afraid of. And I don't know if that's gonna make them feel bad, but like you said, you're gonna be stuck right back where you are anyway. You know, so what's why not try?
One of my favorite mantras is do it scared.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I do that
It's
a
okay to
lot.
be scared.
Yeah, you don't have to get rid of the fear, but you can do it anyway.
Yeah.
Embrace that fear.
Yeah. Well, Melissa, I have a question. As Akshay embarks on his Antarctic expedition, how do you maintain a sense of groundness and balance in your own life? What practices or routines help you navigate the uncertainty and potential worry that comes with his adventure?
That's a beautiful question. So there's a number of things too that we're even doing presently that have really helped me. So for me, being so up close to seeing his preparation, like I'm at all of his meetings with his polar mentor, where we're going through degree by degree, his route, his gear. You know, we were even discussing today, what's the better starting point? And he said, you're such a great polar wife because I've thought about all of this in such detail too. So part of it is the planning and preparation that goes into it that allows me to feel more grounded. And then additionally, my own practices around, staying physically fit, movement, staying connected to friends. So for me, it's so much in connection and also having a purpose while he's out there too. So we've started working on a book together, and I've been working on a relationship book to help other high performers. So in telling our own story, it's been such a beautiful process of really, getting into it, identifying what am I doing, what's working well. And so for me, so much of those routines are the little acts of love that we have throughout the day, right? We aim to touch on every one of the 5 love languages every single day. So in how we navigate our day. So feeling that sense of connectedness. And then while he's out there, we're each going to be recording each other videos. So
I love it.
Every 10 days, he'll have a video from me, and likewise. So we'll have those forms of connection and those reminders and getting to feel that even when he's out on the ice. And so that's been a big part of the process for me as well. So it's the little things we're kind of doing in preparation, but then the routines while he's actually out there, I'm going to set some of my own challenges that are 110 days. So working on the book every single day that he's out there, having some sort of movement. And I have my daily walk practice where for me, it's a moving meditation. So walking, noticing every little plants, the details. He actually hates walking, ironically, unless there's a tire strapped to his back. And so for me, I love that kind of soft movement and that kind of time to really have that space to meditate, to think, to allow thoughts to pop in. And I have a daily gratitude journal practice as well. So I'm always writing down 3 things I'm grateful for every morning, or at least thinking through them. And then same thing in the evening. So it's always creating this frame of reference for me to look at the positives. So I'm really having a different lens on the day of not, what went wrong, but what went right.
Okay.
That's awesome. And I love how so involved you are with everything.
Thank you.
Like the support is amazing. And that you're going to be so busy doing stuff while he is gone, you're not just like waiting, which would be impossible.
And that was a promise I had to make to myself too, is that I would not just be waiting, because I know initially when it got delayed to this year and there's 2 other expeditions added, I did have that moment, that breakthrough moment of saying, am I just going to be sitting waiting for 6 months of this year? And so being able to reframe it, and he even offered to me at that moment, this is an opportunity to practice presence, because if I'm fully present, it's not painful. We're not looking so far in the future, we're creating anxiety. We're not looking back in the past, creating sadness. So how can this be an absolute practice of presence for myself as well?
No,
time is a construct, right? 5 minutes can feel like an hour can feel like nothing. So how you relate to time will help you move through life with more peace and joy. And again, none of us have mastered it. I certainly haven't. I have moments where I'm skiing where I'm like, oh, fuck, I still got an hour left, or whatever it may be, but that's the constant dance. That's the constant practice. And that's part of the beautiful journey.
Yeah.
For both of us, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just kind of scanning our questions here, and don't even have to look at this to talk about this. I've been talking to, or listening to a lot of people, a lot of inspirational people talk, and heard a lot of people talk about death and how critically important it can be to think about it often rather than do the typical, like we had a conversation, this is months ago, prior to watching and hear people talk about it. I remember saying to her, driving down the road in the car, and we were talking about our dog, and I'm like, yeah, you know, we should have about 10-ish years with her. She's like, oh, don't say that. I'm like, no, it's important to realize, you know, you got to think time's limited. And, and if you can appreciate every day as if it were the last, which I don't believe you can really ever fully do, because, you know, we would all be a little bit different. If we knew today was our last day, we're going to be doing wildly different things, but you can do your best to appreciate it in the moment as much as you can. And, you know, death has been so critically important. And, you know, like, our dog that we thought we had, you know, another 10 years with, you know, she actually passed away about 3 or 4 months ago now. You know, she's actually the one on our podcast cover, my pit bull, and she's got, you know, Lyme disease and a couple other tick-borne illnesses caused kidney failure. But it was at a point where I'm like, with everything else going on, like, really, did this have to happen? But you know, it was a beautiful thing for our family. We all went and we had the dog put down together. We even brought our other dog, our border collie, you know, which the pit bull kind of raised the border collie, which is only about a year and a half now. But when we all went and we went to the vet, and it's a horrible story, but we you know, had the dog put down while we're all present, and it was good, you know, especially I think for the kids, because, you know, I think death is such a valuable tool. And you know, and it really does. It just shows you, it's another reminder, everything can change instantaneously. And no matter how much you love or care about it, it can be taken away. So just do your best in that moment to love it and soak
the love in the life that you have.
Yeah. And I question how often you think about mortality and death in you know, not so much in a negative way either, just in general.
Yeah, I don't think it is negative, to your point. I think even the fear of death, which is often demonized as bad, when you have a positive relationship to fear, then the fear of death becomes one of the most empowering tools to live fully. You know, I'm terrified of dying. People think sometimes, the amount of people are like, that's crazy. They don't believe me when I say that. I am terrified of dying. And now, granted, Antarctica is not, again, as she said, not nearly as dangerous as people think, but there's always that fear when you go out. Even, I mean, I think about it too. I have a note on my phone that says, you know, and that has me visualize death. I actually went from a friend of mine, she leads death meditations, where she does a process that'll guide you through really feeling your death fully. So I think being present to death, being scared of death, embracing and being connected to your own death is, like you said, the most powerful tool to live fully more alive. And remembering that one day this will be gone. And when you actually visualize it and look back on your life, you know, it will help you change how you live this life now, because that, like I said earlier, right? That to me is the worst kind of hell, to be 40, 50 years from now and looking back on my life, realize that I didn't actually live the life I wanted. I didn't push, I didn't take risks. I didn't do anything worthwhile. I didn't push myself hard. That regret is hell. And I don't want that. And being present to that death helps me live a better life now.
And even to what you were speaking about earlier with imposter syndrome, that's something that I struggled with tremendously in my early 20s, especially because I graduated from college very young. So I entered the workforce at 19 with a college degree, but was not taken seriously as a very young woman. And so for me, I struggled a lot with imposter syndrome. And it wasn't until the point where, you know, I started to really think about that too, in terms of my own mortality and what are people actually going to remember? And that's when I really just stopped giving a shit about what other people are going to think about my actions. I mean, even the move to Arizona, I can't tell you how many people thought I was nuts. Even in my own friend group, they wouldn't say it at the time. And luckily I met him very shortly after, but making like pretty radical life choices because I just stopped caring what people thought because life is short. Yep. And it was also, you know, right before my move, I actually had someone who I had dated many years back pass away. And it was his death that also prompted me, what am I doing? I still haven't found my person. I have to make a change. And that was a big trigger for me to also just get up and go, was that recognition of mortality and not wanting to live this life without the two things that really make it fulfilling, which is connection and purpose. Yeah. And that is something that Akshay talks about a lot is, you know, those are the two things that make for fulfilling life. And so for me, I was missing that connection. And that was why it didn't matter. I had to go.
Yeah. I believe the top 5 regrets, you know, the top regret of the dying, I can't remember the author of the book off the top of my head, but they mentioned in there, you know, like that live a life true to yourself. I wish I lived a life true to myself rather than, you know, and it's so powerful.
What episode is Alessandra on?
Oh, yeah. Alessandra, she was our episode 12 guest, I believe.
Yeah, she actually was I think we met in middle school. She was like everyone's best friend, amazing. She was one of my best friends, and she had actually got hit by a car when she was walking her dog, and she did not make it. And her husband was with her
a few weeks ago.
Yeah. That gives me goosebumps, but she so badly wanted to tell her story. She had fought anorexia and her mental health was a big thing for her, and then other things. But we have 2 episodes with her telling her story. And I know, forever now she's going to help people.
Yeah.
And when I heard that it happened, it was like, I kind of freaked out for a minute, like I think for like 2 days. And then I've been in this weird, like calm sense. Like when I think about it, I think because I'm so open with, God and who I am and how life is, just everything, I'm just like changing and evolving myself, like my soul. And it's weird because normally I'd be crying every day, hysterically crying. But this is new for me too. So it's not like that I'm cold to it. I just think differently, I think, with her passing. So that's very interesting for me to go through that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about your friend. One of my favorite quotes on death is from this book, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. The gentleman who wrote it, Harold Kushner, he says, "The dead depend on us for their redemption and their immortality." That really helped me reframe my own relationship to my buddies that I've lost. I could waste my life feeling bad about it, drinking like I was for a time, or I could honor their lives and honor who they were through my deeds. Because we are not just our own deeds. We're the sum of every life that's connected to us that has helped shape us, right? So all my friends who died, who shaped me, they are being honored through my life and the deeds I do, and through the impact anybody who touched by my life is touched by theirs as well, because they helped shape me.
Yes.
That's awesome.
We're bigger than just each individual.
Yeah.
Self.
Seriously. Yeah. And that's, I think, one thing about Alessandra is she was the most amazing person, and everyone that knew her will have a good story, forever about her. She's touched so many lives.
And she was so incredibly successful. She had a great career. She's a licensed dietitian, and she had
like 4 different jobs, just to help people basically.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And she was one of the first people to really just like believe in us and what we were doing with this crazy podcast idea, which at that point in time when we had her on, again, I think it was February, like we weren't taking it serious at that point. We're like, we're just having fun with it. And not that we're not having fun with it now, but now I'm just
she was like, just do it, guys. It'll be awesome. Just do it. Who cares what people think, because that's so how she was.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Just talking about like the spirituality or whatever stuff.
There's a couple. There's a couple of questions. I just want to, so we get it wrapped up, but where is it?
What have you learned? Oh, this is for Melissa. What have you learned from Akshay about building resilience in the face of adversity? How can his lessons be applied to create stronger, more connected communities, especially for veterans and their families?
That's a beautiful question. I really think that so much of what I've learned from Akshay is that there are no good or bad emotions. I think that simple shift can be used to move through, not just for the veteran community, but for everyone, in moving through things like anxiety, depression, all these different like quote disorders that we've assigned and ascribed these emotions are negative, but they aren't necessarily, they're based on previous experiences. So it's how do you actually work with the emotions that you're experiencing or allow them to leave, and recognizing that state you're experiencing is temporary. So even for me, moments I'll experience of fear with him being gone, or the sadness, and just being with it and allowing the emotion to be present, to be with it, ask it what you even need from it, right? So maybe that fear means I need to prepare better, or what do I need to either shift that emotion or just simply to feel it deeply and allow it to pass through, because the only way out is through. And that's one of the many things I've learned from Akshay, is that there are no good or bad emotions, and allowing them to be and being with them is the best way to move through them, rather than trying to ignore it, stuff it down, etc. Right? So really just being present to that emotion. And that's something I've even learned through my own experiences. So I also struggled with alcohol at different points because I was afraid of feeling too deeply. And once I really learned to be with my own emotions as somebody who is very empathetic, who is a big feeler, and recognizing that as a gift and something to be worked with rather than to be avoided.
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's amazing.
Was there anything else you guys wanted to touch upon before we wrap this episode up? Anything?
I would only say if you want to learn more about the journey or connect with us, we're all both on Instagram, but also you can find more about it at thegreatsoulcrossing.com. So that's where we have both our crowdfunding campaign as well as more information about the journey and access to a lot of tools and things that we've talked about today. So Akshay has done an incredible job of taking his wealth of knowledge from decades playing on the edge and turning them into mindset trainings. So at different donation tiers, people will get access to the whole library of everything he's created, from going through method acting as a way to become, the version of you that you need to accomplish your goals, to even the different tools to navigate things like pain. So even at the lowest tier, I think there's the 25 tools to move through pain, whether it's physical, emotional, mental. So there's a lot of access to tools because ultimately, everything that I will say Akshay does, he does to give back.
Yeah.
And, he does, he's quite humble. So I'll say it for him, even the book, all of the proceeds up until recently had gone to the Firvana Foundation to help people that are underserved communities. And so now it's currently going to the Crossing, but all the things he's created is to help people be into that next version of themselves, to achieve whatever their goals are and move through the pain that they're presently experiencing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And if anybody is into, reading, things that are inspirational, things that are going to help you improve your life, I guarantee that book is, it's going to change your perspective for the better. It's going to make you a better person. So I highly recommend it. And again, I've never been one to really be into books and reading and stuff like that. And it's really improved, my perception alone in just a few days of listening to it.
I'm really glad to hear that, man.
Yeah, no problem. We really appreciate you guys showing up on this. This is just an incredible experience. It's still surreal to me.
It is to me too. And we are going to be watching you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll keep following you along. And maybe we could do a part 2 when you return or something like that. We're thinking.
Actually, it's funny. The other night when we're talking about this, getting all excited, I'm like, oh my gosh, when he gets back, we can do another one. Talk about it.
Sounds good.
Definitely.
That'd be awesome.
Well, thank you for having us on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. And if you don't mind hanging out for just like 2 minutes, and I'll just kill the recording part. All right, 1 second.